July 27, 2023 meetings of the City of Lakeland Historic Preservation Board and Design Review Committee. The board and committee meet monthly to review proposals for changes to properties located within the city's 7 historic districts and buildings designated as local landmarks, as well as to conduct other historic preservation-related business consistent with Article 11 of the Land Development Code. The board is made up of Lakeland citizens appointed by City Commission and is assisted by staff of the Community and Economic Development Department and the City Attorney's Office. The first meeting comprises the Historic Preservation Board agenda, where business of the board is handled, including recommendations of new historic designations. The second meeting consists of the Design Review Committee agenda and involves acting on recommendations from staff regarding certificate of review applications for major work proposed to properties within the historic districts or local landmark buildings. The Design Review Committee is a standing subcommittee of the Historic Preservation Board. Public input is welcomed for items on the Design Review Committee's agenda, and we invite everyone who wishes to participate to be heard. We ask that all speakers come up to the central podiums, either podium here, state their name and address for the record, and be concise in their comments. Thank you for your interest and participation. And please silence all mobile devices at this time. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to our board chair, Mr. Christopher Olson.
Thanks, Emily. All right, let's call the July 27, 2023 Historic Preservation Board to order and take roll call to determine quorum. Myself, I'm here. Melinda Rinker.
Here.
Bruce Anderson.
Here.
Lynn Dennis.
Here.
Landis Fleming.
Here.
Natalie Oldenkamp.
Here.
Cesar Perez.
Here.
Michael Porter.
Here.
Brittany Wilson.
Here.
We are all present. We have a quorum. All right. So next, we're going to review last month's meeting minutes. Any edits, comments, motions?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any? Nay? No? All right. So we are approved for last month's minutes. Old business. Recommendations taken. Take action on the recommendations from the Historic Preservation Resurvey recommendations. Review those.
So last month, we discussed the results and recommendations of the resurvey of the South and East Lake Morton Historic Districts. Gathered your feedback and input, and so it was decided that we would take action at this meeting to adopt those certain recommendations. So I wanted to go over those just to refresh your memory. So the staff recommendations for the resurvey project include updating the contributing and non-contributing status of each property within both districts, expanding the East Lake Morton period of significance from 1900 to 1940 to 1900 to 1973, obviously expanding to that 50-year threshold. Also expanding the South Lake Morton period of significance from 1904 to 1935 to 1900 to 1973. Amending the criteria for which the South Lake Morton Historic District is listed in the National Register to include 2 criteria that aren't currently listed. Also to pursue boundary amendments to the National Register listed boundaries for both districts to match the locally designated district boundaries. So in the East Lake Morton District, we would adjust the northern boundary to match the local historic district boundary. I've got a map coming up, I'll show you this. But staff recommends not including the Florida Citrus Mutual building in the East Lake Morton District at this time. It's more appropriate to include that in the Munn Park Historic District, and that will be determined when we resurvey that district. In the South Lake Morton Historic District, adjust the northeastern, northwest, and southern district boundaries to match the local district. And this map kind of summarizes that. The hatched marks, or the hatched districts, are the National Register boundaries as they are today. The bold outlined boundaries are the local district boundaries as present today. Obviously, that red X is where the Florida Citrus Mutual building is. We are not recommending including that. But you can see it's pretty minor adjustments to the boundary. Really, the larger section in the East Lake Morton District, which is outlined in pink, That includes a lot of the Garden District area. So just kind of incorporating that into the National Register nomination.
Question, the Florida Citrus Building, that is not currently in, or is it? I can't.
It's being shown as included on this map. That is a map error from our consultant. I'm actually having them correct that so that it will be right in the final report because this map is used 4 times throughout that report. So we want to make sure it's correct and doesn't cause any confusion, but it is not located in the district today.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all the recommendations?
Those are the recommendations.
Alex, I just want to, now I'm hot, okay. I just want to confirm that because the existing boundaries locally are larger than the historic boundaries, there's no issue with matching those.
In terms of the recent legislation, all we're doing is just getting the National Registry to align with the existing local boundaries. And so that's not imposing anything new that they wouldn't already have to go through. And there would be, and I think Emily can probably speak to a little bit more of the benefits in terms of having the National Registry available to some of those properties as compared to, not. And so we are not changing the boundaries in terms of what it is now, the local boundaries. The commission wouldn't be voting on changing any of that. So all we're doing is just making the change for the National Registry at this point when it comes to that.
Very good.
And also, just in case you're curious, how we would go about doing that is send these recommendations with updated maps to the state's Historic Preservation Office. They would review it and then recommend it to the National Park Service for amending the National Register nominations for both districts.
Do you want to go through these individually, or if no one has issues, we can just tack them all at once? But does
That is up
anyone
to the
have any
board.
questions about any of these recommendations?
One more question. So the Citrus Building, why is it more appropriate for the Munn Park District as opposed to this? And I realize that this is more residential, but is that the only reasoning, or is there something else to that?
Nope, that is the reasoning. It fits within the commercial context of Munn Park rather than the residential context of the rest of East Lake Morton.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Do we need a formal roll call?
Yeah, roll call vote
Okay.
would be appropriate.
All right, very good.
Motion, right?
Need a motion, no?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, 2 motions. I, Chris Olson, I'm for. Melinda Rinker,
4.
Bruce Anderson,
Yes.
Lynn Dennis,
4.
Landis Fleming,
4.
Natalie Oldenkamp,
4.
Cesar Perez,
4.
Michael Porter,
4.
and Brittany Wilson.
4.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, new business. Recognizing Landis Fleming for your service on the board. Sorry to hear that you will not be joining us for another term, but enjoyed working with you a lot on this.
Thank you. It's been a privilege. I've served on other boards, and I've been a part of both public bureaucracies and private. I think this has been a model of individualism and cooperation. You don't often see where individuals will become a team member after all the discussion. That we don't necessarily change our mind, but we think that the cooperation is more important than winning a battle. And it's been really nice to serve with a group of people that are really experts. Don't usually get that combination, so it's been nice to be a part of this, and thank you.
I've enjoyed your point of view on things as well from your contracting experience. So.
Thank you, Landis.
Thank you, Landis.
Are there any other topics that anyone would like to introduce? All right, if we have a motion, then we will adjourn.
Move for adjournment?
All right, all All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Melinda, our board has adjourned.
Okay. We're going to call to order the July 27th, 2023 meeting of the Design Review Committee, with the first item of business being a roll call and determine of a quorum. Myself here, Chris Olson,
Present.
Lynn Dennis. Here. Landis Fleming.
Here.
Natalie Oldenkamp. Here. Cesar Perez.
Here.
Michael Porter.
Here.
Okay, and we have a quorum. Let's now review the June 22nd, 2023 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Move for approval.
I'll second that.
All in favor of the adoption of the June 22nd, 2023 Design Review Committee meeting minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and it is passed. Next is reviewing the certificates of review that were administratively approved between June 13th, 2023 and July 18th of 23. There are 20 cases. On our thing here, it's starting at page 10. Does anybody have any questions? We'll take a minute to make sure everybody's reviewed them.
Emily, it seems like metal roofs are very popular.
Yeah, I think there's a trend happening.
I put a shingle roof on mine.
Looks really good, by the way.
And you probably someone came by my house, because I just did this last month too, even though I'm not on here, but shingles.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Questions, concerns, discussion?
These metal roofs, they do know that they're supposed to get the correct version, right?
Yes. Yeah, we've been very specific in, talking with the contractors and letting them know that the 5V crimp and standing seam are I was going to say preferred, but they're the required types, and they're only eligible for certain architectural styles. We also have an information sheet that we send to contractors when a metal roof is being applied for, that is metal roof do's and don'ts in the historic district, so that they're very clear and they have graphics to go by, and we really want to make them understand what we're asking for. So,
Thank you, Emily.
What do you mean, the certain architectural styles of regular shingles or
No.
or the 5V crimp?
so metal roofs are only allowed on houses of certain architectural styles, like frame vernacular, bungalow, colonial revival. Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay. I see people still scrolling, so let me know if you're done looking. You good? Okay, so there's no motion required. We're going to move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting. We'd like to ask the Assistant City Attorney to administer the oath for all who wish to testify during the public hearing.
Morning. If you're planning to speak before the Design Review Committee, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Our first case is 506 West Belmar Street. Final approval is requested for the replacement of wood and T111 siding on the house on the subject property. The owners Ms. Chris Schubert, applicant Morgan Exteriors, Inc. Are there any conflicts of interest among the committee members? And Emily, would you read the staff report, please?
Madam Chair. The subject property consists of one lot of record, which is .16 acres in size. On the property is a one-story, single-family house built circa 1925, which is a contributing building in the Dixieland Historic District. The architectural style of the house is Craftsman Bungalow, which is expressed by a gable roof pierced by a brick chimney, a full-width hipped roof front porch with shallow gable supported by tapered columns on brick plinths, exposed rafter tails with a curved profile, wood novelty siding, and vinyl single-hung sash windows with a 1/1 light configuration. Alterations include removal of all original windows and the enclosure of a portion of the front porch with T111 vertical siding. The applicant requests to remove the existing wood novelty siding and T111 vertical siding and replace with hardy plank lap siding. Hardy trim will also be used to replace the corner boards, window and door trim, as well as the gable fence. So this request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced here. The original wood siding is novelty siding with a 3.5-inch exposure and appears to be in an advanced state of deterioration. While hardy siding is typically an acceptable replacement for wood lap siding, the hardy siding proposed will not match the profile or exposure dimension of the original siding, and therefore its use cannot be supported by staff consistent with the standards and design guidelines. Staff recommends using new wood novelty siding matching the 3.5-inch exposure and curved profile of the historic wood siding. Staff finds that the hardy lap siding with an exposure dimension of no greater than 6 inches may be used to replace the T111 siding, as this is not a historical cladding material. Staff also finds that the hardy trim material may be used to replace corner boards, window and door trim, and gable vents as long as the replacement material matches the historical material in dimension and profile, consistent with the standards and design guidelines. So staff recommends approval of the request with the following conditions to be reviewed and approved by staff at permitting. Number 1, use new wood novelty siding matching the 3.5-inch exposure and curved profile of the historic wood siding to replace the historic wood siding. Use hardy lap siding with an exposure dimension of no greater than 6 inches to replace the T111 siding. And number 3, use hardy trim material matching the dimension and profile of the historical corner boards, window and door trim, and gable vents to replace these features. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is the applicant here today? Yes, ma'am. And would you like to say something in support of your request? Come up to the microphone.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. If I'm reading the recommendations correctly, I'm understanding that the hardy siding profile dimension is not to exceed 3.5-inch exposure on the T111, on everywhere but the T111. And I'm requesting that I be allowed to have the same profile on the entire house for a multitude of reasons. One being continuity of the aesthetic, if you will, cost of materials and labor. The bulk of the house is the novelty board, and just security and preserving the house as it is, trying to mitigate future claims for insurance. You know, the hardy board is resilient to pests and winds and so on and so forth. So I'm simply requesting that I be allowed to have the continuity of the same board, the 6-inch exposure on the entire house, not just on the renovated portion of the porch that's T111. I don't know if it matters, but also with keeping with the aesthetic of my current neighbors, I'm new to Lakeland, I've found that more than not, my neighbors seem to have 6-inch exposure on the entirety of their homes throughout my immediate neighborhood. And I'm just requesting that I be given that same courtesy. You know, I just want to have it clean and smooth, low maintenance, and be safe and secure the house. Thank you.
Okay, is there any public comment in support or opposition to the request from the audience? Any committee members care to ask questions of the member, the applicant?
I guess I just only wanted some clarity of kind of what I'm looking at with this. To be honest, it looks like it looks kind of like there's spray foam that's like leaking out of some of the siding. Was that a bad install at some point or something? I just wanted it looks weird.
What
Yeah,
page?
What
am I supposed to answer? I did that. As I mentioned, I'm new to Lakeland, and I bought the house in the late fall. It appears as though there are several holes that would actually go from the exterior into the interior of the home, and I've had to mitigate a lot of previous work that's been done, work in quotes. And when I found those spots, the first thing I thought to do, because I wasn't expecting to have to do siding and framing and whatnot, I grabbed a can of spray foam. I know it looks janky, not a technical term, and I'm not happy with it. So that was my doing, just to try and mitigate pests coming in and me air conditioning the outside.
Janky's very, technical.
I believe I've actually used that term before.
This day and age, the words don't come quickly. You know? I like to say that my house looks like Sanford and Son right now. It's a work in progress.
So let me clarify. So the hardy board, you can't do a 3.5 inch? What's the reasoning why? What is that difference there between what the hardy board can do versus the novelty wood?
The most narrow exposure that I've found on the James Hardie website is 4 inches, and that's a 5 1/4 total width board. So it can't replicate the profile, the curved profile of the novelty siding, nor the 3.5 inch exposure. The novelty siding is actually the profile is like 2 boards overlapping.
Come out and then down?
No, it actually curves. It has it's kind of a teardrop shape, yeah.
Yeah,
It's called a
teardrop
double OG.
But you can't get that with Hardie. With Hardie, it's just gonna be your lap siding, straight across.
And sir, could you
I'm sorry.
give your name and address?
Your name and
I'm
address.
Addison Morgan from Morgan Exteriors. I am part of my family's company. We've been in business for close to 28 years now, specializing in siding, windows, doors, exterior treatments. So I definitely recommend Hardie for the entire house. If you're trying to extend the life of this house for another 100 years, and you want to have a nice exterior protective layer, I don't think replacing the house with wood is going to put you it's going to put you back in the same boat you're in right now. And I think Hardie's going to get you that other 100 years to preserve this historic home. So that's about all I got to say about that.
Okay, we do not have novelty siding currently on the whole house, correct?
Correct. The portion of the enclosed porch has T111.
Right, okay, I see that. So the house doesn't currently meet a historical, it wouldn't have looked like this 50 years ago or 60 years ago.
With exception of the porch enclosure and the replacement windows, it is contributing. It is the historical appearance as it was.
T111 wasn't 50, 60 years ago.
Right.
Correct.
That's on the porch, that's the exception.
The majority of
That's
the
the
house
exception.
is the novelty siding, and that is, so that's the issue.
Yeah, I wish Hardie made a novelty siding.
There's no other source out there that manufactures a
Not that I can
like
find.
product.
You're probably you'd have to get someone who'd mill it themselves to get that profile anymore, and that's just, she'd spend more to side the house than she would for the house itself.
And I honestly, I can't afford to keep mitigating what's previously been done. I haven't even done any upgrades to the house since I purchased it. I've had to do numerous things that I wasn't aware of.
No, I agree with wanting the whole house to look the same all the way around and consistent exposure. The only flag that went up for me was all the neighbors have 6-inch and her house has 3.5-inch. And do we think the 3.5-inch exposure is original?
Yes.
So it's actually unique in the neighborhood. That's the flag that went up for me.
Now, can you get the wood siding like this, or no?
What they were saying is, and what Michael was saying is that the cost of wood to
No one
do
really
that,
makes a
it's a custom.
manufactured product like that anymore. You'd have to find someone who works in wood and who would mill out that profile with it. Like, I know Hardwood Lumber and Millwork down towards Bartow, Highland City area. They do that kind of stuff, but the amount you'd spend on the wood, you're spending a horrendous amount to get it done, because you'd be doing it out of like what would be original, essentially either a cedar or kind of cypress wood with that, and it is incredibly resistant to stuff. It's not quite like hardy, because hardy's cement at the end of the day, but yeah, it would be horrendous to. And that's where the difficulty on my side of it is, like, I'd love if it was preserved because it is unique. We don't have a ton of homes in any neighborhood that necessarily has this profile. But yes, it's a tremendous amount of work to do. And that's where also, when it's unique and have the same profile around there, I think that goes contrary to the recommendations we have in the historic guidelines, which is to distinguish what was not original versus what was added on later at some point by having different siding, and right now it does that. So there's contrary to what we want, as we'd love it to look all the same, but then that doesn't jive with the guidelines we have. And so that's kind
Plus, you will not get the same quality of wood now, no matter what you pay for it, that house was originally built in.
That is valid.
That was probably a prime wood.
Right.
If
Old
you
growth.
can find a 3, right now, you'd be,
Right.
and it would cost,
last time
and
I
it
think I
would not
looked at.
last like the original lasted. So if you go with the new novelty siding, it will have to be replaced and more care and maintenance taken to it than the original did, and much more than what hardy board would do.
Emily, in your memory, have we had instances where we've had this novelty siding before and it's been okay to go with the?
I can't think of a case where where the committee allowed an entire house to be recited in something else where it had novelty siding. I do remember we had a case where a property owner came up and was wanting to replace a portion of novelty siding that was on an addition to his house with hardy. And I believe the board allowed him to do that because it was an addition. But it didn't match the novelty siding. And I struggled with this as well because I thought about, well, if we required a smaller exposure, like a 4-inch exposure, that would be close to the 3.5-inch. But it still doesn't retain the same profile. It doesn't have that teardrop shape to it. It's still just going to be a lap siding. But at the end of the day, you are the committee members. You have the authority.
The buck stops here. Thank you, Emily.
I decided to take a more strict interpretation because I am staff.
Yeah, yeah.
Bruce?
In an ideal world, that's what we would want.
I'd be inclined to recommend more that a smaller exposure, as close as they can get to it, so it at least retains somewhat looking of the unique, because if this was back in the 20s, we're getting to say we're in the 40s, and prematurely it has rotted at some point because something wasn't done great, like the sill of the window or something, they would have simply replaced it with the same thing because they had it available at that point. So it just so happens at this point it's horrendously expensive or not available at all in general, and I'd rather do something that gets close rather than completely wiping it out, because I know, for him, my neighbor didn't have novelty siding, but the historic board said, well, okay, well, if you're going to replace all the original siding on the house, you might as well do it with something that looks close and we told them do the same profile in Hardy. And in this case, I'd say get as close as you can get. I think I'd be happy with that.
I'm kind of inclined to agree with Michael's and Michael's approach, go with the smallest.
I think the
You know,
applicant would like
Bruce?
to
I may be wrong about
speak.
this, about the availability of this, because on my house, I have.
Mr. Anderson, could you speak into the microphone, please?
I have 4-inch novelty pine, and it's available at Joyner Lumber.
I haven't looked there in a while.
Me?
I haven't looked there in a while, so.
Yeah, that's where we got it. We got it less than 8 months ago, and they have it in great quantities. I don't know what the demand is for it, but that's how we replaced and repaired the siding on my house.
That's not the same as what's on this house, correct?
Probably not. The
Not
original's
exactly
probably
the
not
same, but
pine.
it fits what you're talking about, which is getting close.
Yeah, but, I mean, if we're gonna do 4-inch, right, and get as close as we can get, as she mentioned, and the cost of wood is gonna be greater than the cost of
Yeah, I don't remember. the
hardy lap
cost.
siding,
I don't
right?
remember
So
the
if we're just
price
getting
of the
close, I don't think there's a difference at the end of the day. If we're gonna get the same, then there's a difference. I
Madam
don't see a
Chair,
problem. I mean, I look at the
I
house
think the applicant wanted to respond.
and
now, as soon as he's done, then you, go ahead.
I think what I have, like, if we could keep the same, I will keep it on the front. Right, it's what's most visible from the street.
It might be worth exploring, is all I'm
But that's
saying.
not what
Just
has.
Just
the
because,
novelty wood,
just because
so.
they had 4-inch novelty pine doesn't mean that they don't have the other. I'm just suggesting that maybe a little look around, we might be able to find something that matches it exactly. If they're coming close, I'm not saying buy close, I'm saying, why not give Joyner a call and find out what they got?
And the applicant, go ahead.
If I may, first to your
Pull
point,
the
sir.
microphone to you, please. Thank you.
With all due respect and to your point of just check it out, okay? I have done exhaustive research on affordability. I'm in my 50s, I'm in my late 50s. This is going to be the last house I have. I'm going to cry. If the committee is going to expect me to replace with wood, I'm going to have to sell the house and I'm going to lose everything, okay? It's not a smart investment long-term. The house has been termite eaten. I have done everything that I possibly can to stay within the guidelines of what the city requires and to be a good citizen and neighbor. And I'm simply asking, I have pictures and addresses of my neighbors in the immediate area that have the exposure of 6-inch exposure, lap siding, clearly. Doesn't matter what the material is, if it's vinyl, hardy, or wood. They have a 6-inch exposure on their entire house. So whether or not they approved or submitted for approval or it was reviewed, it's there. I am the minority in the neighborhood, okay? I can't afford to replace with wood, nor as a consumer would I invest in wood in Florida anymore when there's something that is pest resistant, okay? I'm being honest and transparent here. All I'm looking to do is to renovate my house so I can feel safe and not worry about the walls closing in on me or falling in on me. So I apologize for the display, but I am so stressed over this. And I hope you can appreciate. I'm happy to show pictures. I don't want to tattletale on anyone in my neighborhood. The 6-inch lap siding exposure is throughout and predominant in Dixieland, okay? It's a fact. It doesn't matter how it came to be, but the fact that I'm coming before the board and submitting everything as I'm required to by the city and by the Historic Preservation Board, I don't feel that I should be singled out as the example to search for a matching siding, okay? With all due respect, please, please, I bought in this neighborhood specifically because I love the neighborhood. I love the character, and I'm invested in this community. Do not force me to have to sell, because that's what it'll come down to. I can't keep doing this with this house. So please just take everything into consideration. I'm not asking for anything that's outside of what is already there, whether it was approved by the committee or not. That's what this comes down to. And I do appreciate your time and your consideration.
I think that the struggle here And I think I'm feeling like you guys are feeling too, but the struggle here is the uniqueness of the wood siding on this particular home. It is unique compared to others. And even my house, I have, I think, the 4-inch and then the 5.5. I have two different types of siding, you know, based on the addition and all of that. And I think the struggle we're in is, it is a contributing building, and we completely understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, there's that preservation part of the history here in town that we're looking at. Question for you. If we say, sure, go ahead, take it off, et cetera, can this be extremely carefully removed? And that may cost a little bit more, okay? And I'm aware of that, but can it be extremely carefully removed and preserved and given to somebody who will preserve it long-term and use it elsewhere?
That's extremely unlikely. I mean, you're talking about wood that's been on the house for nearly 100 years, and now you want to kind of try to preserve it. When you yank it off the house, it's not going to be pretty. I cannot guarantee that you're going to have this wood in good shape when it comes off the house.
I would add too, and normally I would be completely in support of salvaging, but this did appear to be very deteriorated, and I'm guessing that when you take it off, you're going to discover even more termite damage.
Right. I mean, we can't really
Yeah.
preserve the stuff. I mean, you saw photos of it with foam coming out of it in some areas. Like, even if we tried to replace it with other wood, I mean, it's never going to look the same as it right next to itself.
I'm trying to balance my own personal decision on this with all of this. Go ahead.
If I may add just to your point, when you were asking about salvage, I'm all for salvaging. I've been recycling bricks that I'm finding to rebuild my fireplace inside, okay? Not rebuild the fireplace, but the facade inside. Anyways, my point is this. I had to have new drywall put in the kitchen, okay, which is a whole other story. But when we removed the drywall, just as I suspected, to your point of, is it salvageable? I can tell you from firsthand photos too. The house, the framing. Why I hired them is I know when they take the siding off, I'm gonna have to pay to have them reframe it. That's how termite damaged the framing inside is. So this isn't just siding for me, this is peace of mind for structural integrity. And again, these things would have been discovered long before I came along. But unfortunately for me, there was a lot of weekend warriors who, as one contractor put it, and forgive the term, molested my house. So I am trying to do minor things on the inside, and I'm finding much bigger things because people did not take the proper channels, you know? So I sent a ton of photos of the exterior where the wood has literally been bored through, but I know what is also inside in the framing, and it terrifies me.
And I did include all of your pictures.
Thank you.
In the agenda packet.
Okay, if they let this house not do anything to it over and over again, they would end up, we would approve demolition, they would rebuild it with 6-inch hardy siding. So would that be to the historical board's best interest to let it deteriorate and be replaced with the same material that they're asking to use on it right now? And that's not logical to me.
And Emily, if we do approve the hardy siding, because it's a different exposure and all of that, would that remove this home from the historic register? Would it make it non-contributing?
That's a good question. I don't think it would remove its contributing status because it still retains its essential form. Roof profile and pitch.
Still consistent with the style of that, because, for
Yeah.
example, like I was
Okay.
saying earlier, my neighbor had their entire home replaced with hardy, even though I thought their siding was in pretty darn good condition. It wasn't the novelty siding, but it's the original wood to the home, and it's not, it's still contributing. It's still very much the same home, it's just different siding, which would have been normal. If we had gotten to this point and wood is still as available as it was back then, I'm sure all of our homes would still have wood. And we would have resided them in wood. It's just nowadays, the manufacturing has made it so that hardy is the economical choice out of that. So I guess that was going to be a follow-up I'd ask the contractor, is with a different profile or a smaller exposure, different, working with hardy different, would that be any of a different cost for her? So that's kind of why I was saying, like, if we ask for a smaller exposure that's closer to what it is, that retains some of the uniqueness of your home, I think that's a good compromise. If it's no cost to that, that gets us somewhere halfway in between, if she'll be able to get because I agree, you're probably gonna have to fix some framing, you're probably gonna be putting some new sheathing in places and water barrier down and all that, and it'll be a lot better, but then we still retain some of the uniqueness. I think that's a good compromise for everyone here, because you're right, if it was new, we wouldn't bat an eye at that. We have another new home on our agenda later that we won't bat an eye at.
Mr. Morgan, you're saying a 4-inch versus a 6-inch reveal would be the same cost to the
Right, I mean,
homeowner?
you're talking about still covering the same amount of square footage, so it's still the same cost point.
And the quote I'm looking at here, it looks like you're about $42,000? Yeah, okay. And it's still a chunk of change.
Are you replacing windows? I'm trying to find my,
No.
no. So saving the windows,
It looks like they've been updated at some point, and I thought that Emily had already
yeah,
said
I
that.
was looking at that too, trying to figure that
So
out.
4-inch hardy siding is available
There
for a
are,
4-inch reveal?
It's like a 5 1/4.
Yeah, yeah.
I will have to take a look into it. I know that typically us as a company, we do a 6-inch reveal, which is your 7 1/4-inch plank. I've also done customers where they wanted a 9-inch reveal, so we went larger profile. I'll have to look into it and see what is available in a 4 or 3-inch reveal.
But I'm just saying, it gets us close, like you said.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking,
Same
that it's just
price,
simply.
Same price, it's consistent all the way
Still
around
the
the
square footage
house,
coverage, and
it-
still the same.
It maintains the house as being somewhat unique compared to the neighbors. Does that sound good to you?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, okay, is there any more public commentary on this portion? Okay, if not, we're going into the committee discussion portion. Is there any other committee discussion amongst us? Or have we all done it?
Yeah, I think we've already kind of somewhat discussed. I think I'd make a motion that we approve a hardy with a 4-inch reveal in lieu of the staff recommendations with that, so that you can.
With second.
And what about the T111 siding portion, section 2? That would go away, and the 4-inch reveal hardy? Is,
I think that's fine. I know it goes contrary somewhat to the guidelines, but I would agree with that too, of allowing to use the 4-inch reveal around.
All of the house?
okay, so 1 would go away, 2 would go away, and 3 would be the hardy trim with the 4-inch exposure. Is that your motion, or am I putting words in your mouth?
Yes, my motion would be with the point 1 to be hardy siding of a 4-inch exposure around the entire home for both the novelty and the T11, and then point 3 stays as is.
Okay, so, and that first part takes away the number 2.
Point 3 is just referring to your trim going around your windows and doors.
Right.
That's gonna
Oh,
stay
yeah,
the
yeah,
same.
true, okay.
Right, that's,
Okay, so we have a motion to do the 4-inch hardy siding reveal, and keep 3, and make sure that the 4-inch hardy siding is around all sides of that. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay.
Does this sound reasonable to you?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you.
Okay, and we have a motion and a second. We're going to do a roll call. Myself, approve. Chris Olson,
Approve.
Lynn Dennis, Landis Fleming,
Or,
Natalie Oldenkamp,
Or,
Cesar Perez,
For the motion?
Michael Porter. Okay, and there we go. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Beautiful day.
very welcome.
Okay, our next one is HPB 23-134, 927 South Florida Avenue. Final approval is requested for the construction of a steel carport in the parking lot behind the commercial building located on the subject property. The owner is Miss Diana Solis, applicant Miss Erica Burris, Banyan Construction. Are there any conflicts of interest among the committee members? Seeing none, let's go to the staff report and recommendations.
The subject property is located on the southwestern corner of South Florida Avenue and Cannon Street in the Dixieland CRA commercial corridor and consists of one lot of record that is .15 acres in size. On the property is a masonry vernacular building built circa 1968 that is a non-contributing building within the Dixieland Historic District and has served as a podiatrist's office for several years. To the west of the building, the property also contains a surface parking lot on which the applicant requests to install a steel carport measuring 20 feet wide by 20 feet long and 8 feet tall over 2 of the existing parking spaces. And this just shows the elevation drawings that were submitted. Regarding zoning concerns, the setbacks of the proposed carport appear to meet the setback and height requirements for accessory structures in the Land Development Code. This request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced here. And as the existing building on site is a non-contributing building within the Dixieland Historic District, the requested carport is consistent with standard number 10 with respect to maintaining the integrity of the property if removed in the future. And while the proposed location of the carport at the rear of the subject building is consistent with the design guidelines and CRA guidelines, the design and material of the structure are inconsistent with both sets of guidelines and do not reflect the design or materials of the principal building. So as the request is not consistent with the design guidelines for historic properties or the Dixieland CRA commercial corridor design guidelines with respect to the design and materials of accessory structures complementing and or reflecting the principal building on the property, staff recommends denial of the request as submitted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, is the applicant here today? Don't think so. Okay, is there any public comment? Okay, this is going to go quickly. Any opponents? Okay, let's see. The committee members, any questions regarding the request?
And as the applicant is not present, you can choose to act on the motion or you can choose to postpone it. Or on the recommendation, not the motion, excuse me.
Okay, I actually have a question. Can we go back to the drawing of that? To me, and obviously, you know, your recommendation here, that's just an aluminum building, steel building.
Steel carport.
Steel carport.
That does not, I mean, are there, that to me just does not fit within our guidelines what kind of carport could fit?
Or do you want to close the public portion and open it to discussion since there's nobody here?
That's true. Okay, we're going to close the public portion and move to the committee portion. Thank you. She keeps me on track.
I try.
It's very difficult. So what kind of carport would be appropriate in that neighborhood, in that location, et cetera?
I mean, I would think a more permanent structure, perhaps with brick columns and a shingle roof. I'm not opposed to a gable roofed carport, but something that is more reflective of the building that is currently on the property.
Can you see this from the street?
Yes. You could see it from the side street, which is Cannon, I believe.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay, from the side
Yeah,
of the street.
yeah.
Buzz Tarver has something similar to this, and I've seen several throughout, so this would not be breaking a tradition in that neighborhood.
What does Buzz have?
Buzz has same kind you would order from
Buzz has moved out of that
building
building.
manufacturer or whatever.
He's
He's no longer there. He no longer occupies that building.
No, I understand, but
I was trying to remember seeing it, and I don't. Okay.
yeah, the staff parks under it. At the back part of the, back of the building where the public parking lot is.
I mean,
I
I'd go
guess
with it.
I'm just concerned, can you see it from Florida Avenue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where on this drawing would it be?
Well, it would be
Here,
the
let me go
back
back to the
corner,
site plan.
which this is a terribly out of scale, but.
Well,
So you probably would not be able to see it from South Florida Avenue.
Right, it's from the side
But you would be
street,
able to
I'm
see it from the
sorry.
side street, for sure.
And actually, if it goes along that line, you probably could see it from South Florida if there's, where that 12-foot mark, because that is wide open there, you probably could see the side of it. Whether, and I'm not sure whether going north or south, but, you know, or actually going north, you would be able to see it. What is down here, is the Cannon Street, you said, is where? Down on, to the?
It's on the
south of
top of that
The
image.
north side of
Yeah,
it.
north side of that image.
And an alley in the back.
Just for context, we did allow, it used to be Fat Maggie's, it's now Good Time. In the Dixieland Mall area, we did allow a kind of pole barn structure, but it was a wooden structure, and it also had almost an awning covering on the gable ends. So it was a little bit more decorative, even though it was very vernacular in nature. Obviously, that Dixieland Mall area also has a very frame vernacular building on it, so it reflected the building that was on the property. This goes against the general, aesthetics of the building, which is why I made my recommendation.
What are the buildings to the south and the north of that and the west?
So the top image shows the building looking kind of southwest. So there's another commercial office to the south of the building. The bottom image shows the surface parking lot and the alley behind the subject property. As you can see, that alley, once you cross that alley, there are residences on the west side of the alley.
Is this going to go where the blue and red cars are?
Yes, approximately, yeah.
Yeah, having worked with doctors, I'm assuming that this is the doctor wants to.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. I think he should just put a nice awning and run from the car to the awning.
Well, it does appear that they already have some awnings, which is kind of why I think if this were just more wood and pole barnish, that we'd have a lot less objections to it.
There's also the question of the corrugated roofing that we don't allow.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, can I motion to
Yeah.
deny this? This is, I don't know,
Second.
we're having this conversation. I mean, that means that he has to go through the process again, right?
right,
You have to resubmit.
But he's not even here, so I just motion to deny the
that's right.
Second,
staff recommendation.
I think Natalie seconded.
okay.
So motion to deny technically would be a motion to
For staff recommendation, I mean,
approve, per staff recommendations. Yes, no? What's the verbiage we need here?
we denied
You
it.
can, a motion to deny the request is submitted.
Okay, so that's what this is?
Yes,
And second was?
Natalie.
Okay. And is there any, since we have a motion to deny this, is there any other committee conversation on this?
I think we're actually all in agreement pretty much if we want to deny it. We're just like,
Let me
racking
go
our
through
brains on what would it be?
the check boxes. Okay, we're going to do a roll call. Melinda Rinker, that would be for the motion to deny. Chris Olson.
Agree with staff recommendation.
Len Dennis.
For the motion.
Landis Fleming.
Or
Natalie Oldenkamp.
Or
Cesar Perez.
Or
Michael Porter.
Or.
Okay, this has been denied. Thank you.
And just for the committee's knowledge, I have been in contact with Ms. Burris, the contractor. She had a couple questions about, well, could staff approve something smaller? And so I do believe she will be submitting a revised design.
Okay. Thank you.
It's about the fact that it doesn't match.
We had a conversation.
Okay, our next case is HPB 23-135, 127 West Belmar Street. Final approval requested for the new construction of a single-family house on the subject property. Owner is Scott and Tanya Strauser, applicant Mr. Ernie West, Sadler Homes. Are there any conflicts of interest among the committee members? Emily, would you read the staff report and recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The subject property is an interior lot of record and consists of .17 acres. It is 50 feet wide by 145 feet deep. This lot is currently vacant and has alley access at the rear or north side of the property. These photos show the subject property and adjacent properties. The applicant requests to build a one-story, single-family house consisting of approximately 1,638 square feet of living area. The home will feature a neo-traditional aesthetic reflecting elements of the bungalow and frame vernacular architectural styles, such as a gabled roof and gabled front porch supported by simple square columns, windows with a 1/1 light configuration, and a front entry consisting of 3/4 light double doors. An attached garage is proposed at the rear elevation of the house, which will be accessed from the alley, and an integrated lanai will be located excuse me, on the west elevation of the house. This is just a floor plan drawing of the proposed house. So materials proposed for the new house include a concrete stem wall foundation raised 22 inches above grade, and the foundation will have a stucco finish, hardy lap siding with a 6-inch exposure, hardy board and batten and hardy shingle siding in the gables, hardy trim and casing, vinyl single hung sash windows with 4-inch mullions between paired and grouped windows, 3/4 light double doors at the front entry and double French doors in the lanai. The door material is to be determined. Asphalt architectural shingles on a 6/12 pitch roof and hardier wood fascia with a vinyl soffit. The front porch will have a concrete floor and steps, and the floor will be covered in pavers. Hardy wrapped square columns will be used, and the exterior paint colors are to be determined. The site plan proposed for the proposed new construction shows orientation of the home's front facade towards West Belmar Street. The proposed building setbacks and porch depth for the house meet the Land Development Code's urban neighborhood standards. And this request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced here. Adjacent to the subject property along West Belmar Street exists several 1- and 2-story houses that exhibit the bungalow, frame vernacular, and Mediterranean revival styles. Staff finds that the proposed new house is compatible in massing and scale to contributing bungalow houses found throughout the Dixieland Historic District. The scale and proportion of the architectural elements of the house, including roof pitch and floor-to-ceiling heights, is also compatible with adjacent structures. Staff finds that the proposed materials are consistent with the residences in the surrounding neighborhood and the design guidelines. The design of the house displays a neo-traditional style that is compatible with the architectural character of the district. Features such as the front gabled porch supported by square columns with simple capitals and bases, lap siding with board and batten and shingle siding in the gables, windows with a 1/1 light configuration, and a 3/4 light double front door are consistent with historical architectural styles found in the neighborhood as well as the design guidelines. Finally, the proposed placement of the house on the lot is consistent with the design guidelines and urban neighborhood standards in terms of orientation, building setbacks, and porch depth. The front yard building setback at 15 feet is the minimum required by the code and is compatible with the houses on either side of the subject property. 205 West Belmar Street to the west of the subject property is set back approximately 11 feet from the property line, and 121 West Belmar Street to the east of the subject property is set back approximately 12 feet from the property line. So staff recommends final approval of the request with the following conditions to be reviewed and approved by staff prior to permitting. Number 1, windows shall comply with the following requirements. Windows must be recessed to provide a shadow line and not installed flush to the exterior wall surface. Windows must also include historically appropriate trim, including header, sill, and apron. And number 2, submittal of an exterior paint palette. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is the applicant here to discuss in support of the project?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Ernie West. What else do you need? The address? Like my personal address?
Or business.
Okay, 221 Palmetto Street, Arbondale.
Okay.
His office.
So are you the owner or the, oh no, you're the Sadler Homes. Okay. Is there any information you would like to express, conversation, discussion of this?
No, I mean, the windows will be recessed. I do have the paint colors from the homeowner now, and I have it here. I don't know if I can just need to email it over to Emily maybe at some point or how that works, but,
You can just
no, I mean, those are easy for
Rather
us to
paint
accommodate.
colors? Well, no, but does it?
Not to us, Emily can approve it.
Staff will approve.
I'm okay
paint
if they're
colors.
hot pink. I'm,
Don't go there.
Lakeland, Bahamas.
Pink?
Okay, is there any public comment on this? And we're going to, any comments from the committee chair, any questions for the applicant? From the committee? Okay, we're going to close the public portion of this and go to the committee discussion. Any discussion?
Emily, what was the average setback?
The average setback was around 12 feet,
Okay.
very near, and of
So
course
it's
he
very,
can't go
very,
any.
very forward, okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about that long driveway in the back, but yeah, for consistency, I get it. All right.
Yeah, because there was 11 on one side, 12 on the other, and so 11, 15, 12. That's
One house that was, I think, set back 19 feet from the property line that was further down the street. So yeah, the average was very narrow. I mean, it was a very short setback.
Any other discussion, motion, et cetera?
Move for approval per staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? We shall go to roll call. Myself, approve per staff recommendations. Chris Olson?
Approved.
Lynn Dennis? Or Landis Fleming?
4.
Natalie Oldenkamp?
Or
Cesar Perez?
Or
Michael Porter?
4.
And approve per staff recommendations.
Thank you.
I just wanted
One
to-
question, Mr. West.
Yes.
And I don't think it changes anything, but on the drawings, it shows like some little shingles where like the vents typically would be on a historic home, but
The hardy shingles
just for.
on the gable, the top of the gables?
Yeah,
Mhm.
just for aesthetics, though, they're not functional, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to mention that Mr. West has been extremely responsive and good to work with. We've had a lot, good conversation back and forth. So it's a
Thank you for
Now,
that.
Hey, we want everything to go as smooth as possible.
Now, just
We don't
because
want
I-
to come back a bunch of times or have any, rather be clear to start with.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. But what are the colors? Because I'm curious now.
Yeah, they're random names. I don't even know. Gray horse and pure white. I mean, they're
Grayson
that's a
West.
rough
Perfect.
rendering of it, but
Whatever's on the
I
contract.
think it'll
is
look
probably
good.
what you're-
It'll look good in
you're
there.
thinking.
So. All good on mine? Okay, and then I can just, guess email the color
Yeah,
over to you at some point?
I'll be
And,
emailing you the certificate of review later
Okay.
this afternoon, and
Okay.
then you'll be good to go to submit your permit.
Awesome. Thank y'all. All appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
There is no other business, is that accurate? Then we would like to motion to adjourn somebody?
Second.
There was no motion.
You're the first one.
Did you want a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Here we go. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't know if I can function if you're not there in the chair.